The DIESOL podcast.
Digital integration in English as a second or other language.
Episode 29. Zoom games with Robert Jonte.
Hello and welcome to DIESOL. This is episode 29. We are your hosts. I am Brent Warner.
And I'm Michelle Reyes.
Hello,
hey,
Michelle.
Brent.
How are you?
I'm glad that it's almost 2021.
Thank you, everybody, for voting, as we asked on the last time around. We are here on episode 29. Time's flying now. These last few minutes here. So, Michelle, anything new with you?
Nothing new. Again, just wrapping up the year. Trying to sort of reflect on what best practices we've learned in terms of teaching through an online platform, and how long are we going to be doing this, and just sort of reflecting end of the year stuff. What about you?
I did hear a little rumor from one of our other local colleges that they might be closed until 2022. They're starting to come out, so we'll see what happens.
Well, it's
speechless.
Yeah.
All right, so let's take a look here. We have a little thing. So if you listen to this episode soon after the release, so we release on Monday, on Tuesday, you and I are doing a little quick PD session.
30 minutes, Orange County Q. We're calling it an orange slice of PD. And so Brent and I will be doing a presentation on.
You sound so excited, Michelle.
No, I thought you were going to come in.
Oh, you want me to jump in on that?
Jump in on that.
Yeah, so we're going to do, if you like the Edu Protocols episode with John Carippo, we're going to be doing some Edu Protocols in ESL. And so if you have, if you want to look at some basic implementations, how these things actually look, and like I said, it's just short. It's 30 minutes in and out. You can have dinner while you're watching. You can jump in and talk to us if you want to. But that'll be at 6:00 on Tuesday, the 17th, I believe that is. And you can follow us. You can go get the link from us on Twitter, or you can find it. We'll put it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, and that's 6 p.m. California time, 8 p.m. Texas time, Central time, and I guess 9 if you're in New York and the East Coast.
Awesome. Okay, so let's get into it.
Well, today we have another special guest, and I'm actually pretty proud of this one. We have my colleague here, Robert Jonte. Hey, Robert, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for making time on this Saturday to come and record. Robert and I teach together. And I happened to see on one of the workshops that was being offered that he was doing one on games with Zoom. So automatically that caught my interest because number one, I like games. Number two, the number one question right now is, how do I keep my students engaged while teaching on Zoom or whatever platform you're using? And also, the second question is usually, how do I do that without spending all this exorbitant amount of time recreating things, right? Because you've got Zoom fatigue and everything else. So we have him on the show. And so let me give him a formal introduction. Robert Jonte has been teaching English for over a decade. He earned a CELTA from the Prague International House in the Czech Republic before moving to South Korea. He currently teaches with the Defense Language Institute in San Antonio, Texas, and that's where I'm at as well. That's where I met him. He has taught and visited countries across Europe, the Middle East, Central and Eastern Asia. Besides teaching English, Robert enjoys painting and making music. The neighbors do not enjoy the latter, he says.
So, Robert, what kind of music are you making?
A lot of noise, mostly. This is a good time of year to go look for pedals for your guitars because people are trying to, get inventory in and out for Christmas. So I like to have little noise boxes to stomp on, and I don't know if everyone appreciates it as much as I do.
Like when you're saying noise, do you mean actually like noise core type of like funky stuff, or is that just like a polite way of saying that people don't like you? listening to you? Your neighbors don't like listening to you?
Probably both. I will play more traditional kind of rock or metal stuff, but I also like, I'll say ambient noise, but also aggressive in your face noise.
All right. Awesome. Is any of that available? Do you have a SoundCloud?
I am super lazy, and you're going to see that that's totally a part of making these Zoom games. Laziness is a strong factor here.
Awesome. I like that. The laziness is strong. That's going to be a new
laziness
sticker.
Is strong with this one.
All right, awesome. So that sounds cool. So when you become unlazy, and if you do make a SoundCloud someday, we'll also link to the music so people can get a sense of that. But for now, let's jump into things. Okay, so the topic is Zoom games. Robert, let's talk a little bit about this. So how did you get started making games? And, obviously we all did this transition, but some people did it more successfully in different areas than others. And it sounds like from what Esel's saying from your sessions and what your students' responses are, that you have very successfully made some of these things work. So can you share just kind of about your first just games in general, and then your approach to bringing them online?
Sure. Well, I kind of think that our students are just not prepared for some very difficult games. There's a lot of explanation that needs to go into it. So just keep a game super simple and make it up as you go if you have to. I think about kids playing games. They don't make sophisticated rules. They just make it up as you go. Hey, you can't do that. That's illegal. And now we've got a new rule. Your students are happy to do that too. So you don't have to invest too much really if you're feeling a bit creative and your students get that bug as well.
Yeah, that's
Then you
true.
can kind of develop it more organically.
Mm-hmm. So Robert, so I know that you've got lots of ideas. You've already, I don't know if you've made some of them up or you've transferred some of them into, or like you said, you make them up as you go along and change and adjust. But what has been your experience so far with those games?
Good experience. There is always a learning curve, as I mentioned, and Zoom makes things a little more difficult. It's just another buffer between you. But keep the game simple and students pick up on it and seem to have a good time.
All right, so let's get into some of the specifics. Let's go to your default game. If you have a default, what are you doing, and how do you get it set up, and how do you get your students rolling with it?
Well, typically on Monday morning, if I have new students, I'll kind of prepare them for Zoom. Hey, let's try the annotate button, and can you share your screen with me? That kind of thing. So I want to get just a baseline level of ability. I always think, there are 5 minutes left in class. Is this going to be teacher time and I'm going to tell my goofy story, or can we just jam out a quick game? And I think we can all agree the second is better. So I started thinking, how can we have just simple games? So often in the classroom, we just write stuff on the board. We've got a chat right here. Go-to games, things like Hot Seat or maybe Apples to Apples. You can do those in the chat without, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I think about the flipped classroom, and with Hot Seat, typically the word is behind the student in the hot seat and the other students are giving hints. Well, we just kind of flip it. One student gets the word and must explain it to the others.
So you send it to the student through the private chat option then?
Yes, I just send them a private chat. I say, hey, look at the chat. That's your word, and start talking. You could also do taboo, but that just takes a few seconds more on the teacher's part to think, what are the words connect? What are the easy ones?
So let's break these down for people who haven't played these games before or haven't refreshed themselves. So Hot Seat, the words hidden behind that student, right? And they get to see the original word, and then hold on, now I'm forgetting myself.
So let me explain. So Hot Seat, I've got a whiteboard behind the student, and it has a vocabulary word on it. the other students can see the word and they try to make the one student guess. You could also do that in teams.
Right.
And in this case, I just flip the idea. I send one word to one student, and then they try to get the others to elicit it.
Okay, and then do you set up any parameters as you're going around with that, or is it just like, hey, just go for it, just see what you can come up with as long as you don't say the one word?
That's it. Keep it simple.
Awesome. Then with Taboo, then the version on Taboo for this is you're also adding a number of words that they're not allowed to say at the same time, right?
Correct. So taboo would be something like the word is submarine. You could not say torpedo. I mean, I could think of a bunch of ocean words you couldn't say, but
right.
Maybe you shouldn't say torpedo or navy. So if you said boat underwater, that would be okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty simple version of taboo, but yeah. So I would send you in the chat something that's like, this is the word. And then below that, don't say this, this, and this.
Mm-hmm. You know, I like that you're mentioning, number one, you're still keeping it simple, because as we know, the real taboo has maybe like 5 words that you can't say, right? So if you're limiting it to just a couple, that's great for students who suddenly get nervous when they have to describe something, and they of course want to say the word that's listed. And but it also makes it a little bit more challenging. So if a teacher had more than just the 5 minutes, or you're repeating this activity over a few days, then the students would catch on and get better at describing.
Definitely. And as someone who teaches the same group of books over and over again, you slowly start to build your repertoire, or your, I don't know, I've got like a Word document full of vocabulary words. You could just add the taboo words to that, copy paste.
Yeah, that makes it really easy. Then, I mean, that's seriously zero prep. Well, the hot seat is zero prep, right? You're just like, here's the word I want you to use, right? The taboo is low prep, still a couple of minutes, and like you said, if you have it already from previous experience, then you're real quick to go on to it. I love that. I'm gonna play one of these next week, I think.
Well, for me,
if you have the taboo.
For me, this sounds, it sounds particularly useful because not all of the students in every school have access to a computer. So I do know of cases where some students are simply using mobile devices. And so this makes it very, very stress-free for the teacher. I know a lot of teachers may be turned off to other games because maybe that platform is not available on the student's mobile device. So that sort of, that would mean, number one, the teacher is not preparing too many things. And also there's no stress on like, hey, are we going to have a glitch? Because the only glitch is really the microphone, right? And I guess if you're using the camera.
Well, there could be other things going on. I found that everyone's Zoom is a little bit different.
Yes.
It's really hard to know what the students see. I like to watch other teachers teach just so I can see their screen. Lots of differences between my Zoom and other teachers' Zoom, lots of differences between what I see as the host and what students see as, I guess I'll say, a guest. But using the chat, it's simple. Everybody knows how to do it. I told you I'm really lazy.
So those are some great ideas for vocabulary games. Are there others that you use also to target vocabulary, or maybe perhaps other content areas or other games?
I really like Mad Libs. I think Mad Libs are fun. So sometimes I'll type in just to kind of fill in the blank in the chat as something funny to do and just see what people come up with. They don't have to use the vocabulary words. But now that I'm thinking about it, you could make a kind of apples to apples Mad Lib game and give more points if they use the target vocabulary.
And so, Brent, are you familiar with apples to apples?
I don't know if I've played it. I'm aware of the game. I don't think I've ever actually played it though. How does it work?
Let's do a quick one.
Oh, okay. We're in. Yes.
All right. I'm going to give you a word.
Okay.
And then both of you will submit another word. That other word is somehow connected to my word. And whatever I think is the best one, I choose it. So I could be a student, and my word is clown. Go ahead.
Car.
Funny.
I get clown car, and of course clown and funny makes sense. You know what? I'm going to have to give Brent the point. Because,
Brent.
Yeah, clown car could be, I don't know if it's idiomatic, but clown college, I would have given, top prize to clown college.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, teacher, again. Brent can't win this one.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's up to you to decide how close the word is. I could say a lumberjack, and someone could say axe. Another person could say beard. Another person could say flannel. And I guess all of those could describe a lumberjack. I'm going to go with the flannel, though. You could have debate among students about what's right and wrong, and I always encourage that.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that too. I now that I'm thinking about it, you could also have, for example, if you only had a handful of students, or if you only had a handful of students that are able to make the guesses in one section, so you're going to say, hey, students A, B, C, you guys are going to be the ones that are going to be contributing the answers. Then you could also, if you already had your polls set up inside of Zoom, you could let the rest of the class vote on which ones they liked. So you could just have a simple poll A, B, C ready, and you could say, hey, all right, Guillermo, you're A, Joe, you're B, and Sichuan, you're C, right? And then the students could just vote on those, and you could get a full class participation in there at the same time without much extra prep.
You see, you're doing the exact thing that I do. I don't put too much effort into it because I'm just going to be devastated when that lesson or game doesn't come across. So I try not to get too invested in it, because if it's not working, forget it, move on to the next thing. But already you're kind of coming up with new ideas. I hadn't thought about that with the poll.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
I could see where the debate part would be awesome, because I like debate as well, especially when students get really into it. But you talked a little bit earlier about having those pockets of time, and whether that time is going to be teacher time, giving a story, or the students doing the talking themselves. And I really like that one of those little simple activities in the chat can turn into that, because that's a challenge that language teachers always face, right? We end up filling up the empty pockets of time with what we think they want to hear when they should be practicing. So that's really cool. I like it.
Bueller. Come on, guys, talk to me. Okay, well, let's play a game. And then once they're invested, they'll get very worked up. You'll get that discussion.
So I wanted to go back a little bit to Mad Libs, because now I'm interested in that one. And so could you describe, like you said, you choose something just for the heck of it, right? And have them. Can you give an example, maybe?
Last night I dreamed about blank, or I dreamed that blank, and when I woke up, my blank was missing. I dreamed about eating marshmallows and my pillow was missing.
Oh,
I dreamed about eating my English book and my brain was missing. I don't know.
You know what I like about that? I just thought those are great if you wanted to target a specific grammar point and you're practicing or following up the next day to see if your students internalized something or what they're still missing. Because you just said, last night I dreamt that, so that gives you a noun clause, right? Or you could have, what was the end of your sentence? And my brain was missing. But you could do all sorts of things like parallel structure, or you could do sentences, passive sentences, and gerunds and infinitives. This just came to my mind because we know that students often, have trouble getting those down.
Use the structure that's in the book or whatever you're using. You can post it on the Zoom whiteboard, so everyone can see it clearly, or just throw it in the chat as is, and as the answers roll in, mention them, talk about them, give your feelings, and hopefully the students will too.
I like that a lot. So the prompt that you gave is great too, because you could then turn that into like, hey, this becomes a story writing prompt, right? And you guys created the parts of it through a Mad Lib activity, and now you could theoretically put small groups into breakout rooms and say, that's your prompt, create the story, and then we're going to come back and tell it. There's a couple other ways to look at this too, because that could also be dictation. So if you're not writing it out, but you're saying, hey, you need to make sure that you're hearing me well enough, and then type the answers into the chat, right? Or I might repeat it a couple of times, but then I want to hear that full sentence, what I said, written, plus your added part as a proper dictation activity. Yeah, there's a lot of cool and quick ways that you could jump around with that without having to, again, same thing, right? Not doing too much prep. My first thought was, okay, I'm going to make all these slides, and then each slide they'll go to the next one. But I'm like, no, hold on, let's pull all that back and do the least possible prep work to make it
simple, silly.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Well, on that note about writing stories, I hadn't thought about this, but have you heard of Twitter stories? People on the bus going to work will just post a line of their novel, let's say. You could do the same thing in the chat, write a short story over the course of the day. I love that idea.
Twitter stories. I hadn't heard of that.
I mean, I've heard of people writing like the Twitter novels, but you're saying like as a collaborative activity for the class.
Yeah, that's an idea, just from what you said.
Yeah.
And about telling stories, I have another idea for that, kind of away from the chat now. A little more advanced would be to have your students share their screen. They can, of course, share pictures and stuff, whatever you want. But I think it's neat to have them tell a story. And to do this, you could give them a prompt. And let's say, for example, where did you go this weekend, and what did you do? Tell me, like breakfast, morning activity, lunch, midday activity, and dinner, evening activity kind of thing. And they will just look for pictures online. I had Eggs Benedict for breakfast. So I'm gonna go type in Eggs Benedict and click on the image. After students have gotten the pictures for their stories together, they will just click from tab to tab on their browser, or they can just share the pictures anyway, really, and tell a story with those pictures.
You know what, that again, so I think Brent and I, we go from like, we are used to using slides and apps and blah, 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 but not everybody's comfortable doing that. And not everybody has the time to do that. And again, like we said, sometimes that's just not going to work on the platform that the student is using on their end. And as soon as you said students are sharing their screen and clicking from tab to tab, that automatically
like, it's so much easier than downloading the picture, putting it into the slides, having the slides in order, right? Like,
yeah. Or if the student is the one telling the story now, there's very little stress on their end, especially if you've got a student who's not familiar with saving the image, importing the image. I know that I have all sorts of experience with students from different levels of ease with technology, and for our students too, that's a lot. It adds a lot of stress if they feel like they don't know how to do something that the rest of us might say, well, just copy and paste. It's like, but you could also just...
We've had students who were a little frightened when we told them to, use the mouse. What mouse? Is there a rat in here? Technology is difficult for everyone in one way or another.
Yeah.
Right.
It's funny because now too, I mean, it's even hard for me sometimes now. Google on many images, if you're doing like a Google image search and you want to pull down an image, it pulls down, like you try to drag it off and it does like the Web3 thing, like it doesn't let you pull the image anymore. Yeah. So there's all sorts of little, so again, you're avoiding all of that just by having the most direct way to get access to those images. Yeah.
And
was that clear, the steps of doing this?
Yeah,
totally.
and Robert, again, it was very clear, and I'm coming up with a new, like a twist on that. So sometimes, when if you gave the example of sequence of events, or retelling something with a clear beginning, middle, and ending. And of course, if we're focusing on verb tenses, or if we're focusing on transition statements or transitional words, this is something where if a student has the tabs in order, it helps them also to internalize the order of something. Or now you could say like, all right, let's switch those tabs around. Now retell the story in whatever order that is. But you could throw also, I guess if people wanted to increase the difficulty of something, throw in, make it harder. That would be.
Well, here I have them giving their own story. The teacher or another student could pick a series of images, and then that's kind of the challenge, to make up a story quickly.
Yeah. So that reminds me of like, we talked about this in one of our episodes, the emoji power paragraph, Brent. Mm-hmm. That's one of the Edu protocols. And that just, again, for teachers, I actually did a little workshop on the emoji power paragraph. And one of the instructors was telling me, I hate emojis. So I said, oops. But you don't need to use emojis. You can use images. Just pull them up on the tab, and that's your randomizer. You've got your random images, and you can start telling a story. And then I don't know if you guys do this, but what I like to do when students are speaking, either I have the rest of the class retell, because then they have to. Now they're going to give you different details or forget things. And then the third layer of that would be, let's write it together, and then let's insert things, because everybody's going to remember things differently and report them differently. But now you could have something that is collaborative or built together, co-constructed with the students. And you'll have your speaking and your writing, and maybe some editing for if you're targeting grammar or targeting certain structures.
And doing something like that, telling a story with those pictures, is hard the first time. I always model it, and then I give them a prompt. Usually that same one, breakfast, morning activity kind of thing. It's easy to follow, and you do have to give them time to go, think up the story and search for those images. But after that first one, I find that it really helps them tell stories. They, of course, go find their pictures faster after that first time. And I forgot the third thing I was going to say.
I love it. I mean, this is just like...
Yeah. It was just so simple, and then Ixchel comes up and she's like, we could do this and this and this.
No. It's because I'm thinking, again, like I said, teachers often come to me or colleagues, and I often like to see what other gadget, what other tool, how are they doing this? But the issue we're always trying to come back to is, how do we keep our students engaged, and how do we make that time worth it? And also, how do we give them more time to experience and practice the language, right? And so sometimes I'm thinking, man, there's been times when I already know that it's going to take a while for the students to learn the technology and all that. And I expect that. But if I can just cut that out and throw in something like this, that works, that fulfills the goal, right? Like with the Twitter stories. We can't sit around in class and pass out the piece of paper and fold it and then say, continue it. But you can still do that in the chat. You can still do that on the whiteboard annotation, the whiteboard tool.
It does take a little more effort to not prepare it, but just explain it to the students and make sure it's clear. In class, you can just throw out those little strips of paper, and here it's not like you need to do more prep work, but you do need to do a lot more explaining.
Yeah. I mean, all these things are quickly like, I think just the way that our brains work is like, okay, what are other variations of these that might work for my class? And I was thinking too, on the Twitter stories, if people are using Padlet, then you could have like 5 or 6 people create the first sentence, right? And then students could choose different ones when they have an idea for the second sentence across the different across the different columns. Does that make sense? So that way you could have like, hey, we can create a bunch of different stories and you can jump around to see, and that would also be challenging them to be thinking thinking flexibly as they're looking at different changing stories, so that doesn't always go the way that they want. The concern that I would have around the chat only would be that someone puts in a sentence and then someone else had written their sentence and they lose it, or it's like, oh, someone got it in before me. I mean, it could still be fun, but like, yeah, it's just different ways to look at it.
I'm thinking, so for people who don't use Padlet, especially if you don't have the paid version, you're limited. So I've sort of shied away from Padlet, but just as simple as a Google Doc, and it just reminded me of an activity where I have students go in there and find a picture, write a sentence. But now if you're doing Twitter stories and each student is assigned a page or something, or even a slide, I guess, if you wanted to go with Google Slides, and the students could be flipping between the stories or among the stories and writing out different sentences. And as they're, let's say on page 1, you have a couple of lines already written. By the time they get to page 4, that story has already changed. The course of where the story is going has changed. And by the time you get back to number 1 and you're reading your own story, so it just, I could see that being really fun. After you do it a few times too, because I could also see it just being so much fun that we start writing things and then you've got to wrap up the story so it has an end.
Well, and also as the teacher, you could go in and kind of mess with their stories, right? Like you could go in and throw in a sentence that like totally skews it, because one thing that I have with my students is like, it takes them a while to feel brave in creativity sometimes, like as we're dealing with adults, right? Like kids, I think, will go crazy and do anything, but with adults, they sometimes kind of go for like, oh, I went to the store and then I bought bread and then I went to the checkout and then I went to my car. And it's like, okay, but where are the aliens popping in to destroy all of the bread in the whatever it is. So I think as a teacher, you could go in and really kind of mess with them really and change that around, and then have some fun with seeing how they continue to use language to make adjustments to your distractions, I guess, inside of there.
Have you ever heard of the improvisation game Yes and?
Yes, and please tell me about it.
It's an amazing game and a way to get engaged students. I use it all the time.
Oops, Robert, we lost your audio here. Hold on.
Go ahead and give me the yes and, Brent.
Oh. Yes, and sometimes it makes me want to jump up and down doing jumping jacks.
Yes, and I have to get in my exercise. So we're just kind of making up stuff and saying, yes, I agree to that idea, and here's more. Well, that's something you can do with students, and going from Ms. Reyes' idea, hey, throw them a curveball. Don't tell them yes and, say but. Mm-hmm. Or although, as if you really want to start writing stories, start throwing them those curveballs, and that's one way to do it.
I love it.
Not using yes and, but using but, or one of those other connecting words.
I like that because so we're doing speaking practice, but sometimes you've got discussions where students have to hit specific language functions or know how to disagree diplomatically, know how to compliment someone, and also know how to take a compliment, stuff like that. And I sometimes through Zoom, that's I haven't had a chance to revisit, but now I'm thinking if you were to play that in Zoom, and especially now where I think on, I'm going to guess that if everybody's updated to the latest Zoom, you can arrange the tiles of the pictures on your screen. Mm-hmm. And so you can randomize, or you can now call on someone. And as a teacher, if you're throwing them a curveball, now you can say, whatever it is that you're targeting. It could be a transition, or it could be like what the but, yes, but, because now you're forcing them to think in that subordinating the hierarchies of grammar. So that's a cool one. I'm going to use that just for fun and regular conversation.
Yeah, lots of times people don't use the target grammar. it's our target. It's what we want to study. Their grammar is fine and totally valid. We're just not practicing that now. So if they kind of get away from not the topic, but from the target grammar, then you can just use something like that. I'll put in the chat, or just straight out button, just say yes and, or yes but.
That's really cool. And I'm also thinking, so we talked about how sometimes it becomes difficult for students to be creative. You could also have them do the same things with a partner in a breakout room, and then you can come back together. And now I bet that the second or third time after they've done it with different partners, they're going to be a lot more smoother and a lot more quick on their feet to come up with something. And that gives them the confidence to be able to do that together as a group. So I like that idea.
I also like the idea that these are kind of short and fast activities because they can get more comfortable with it over a couple of times. I think, Robert, like what you were saying earlier, is like if you do an activity that you put all this effort into and it blows up, then as a teacher, you're not really motivated to try it again, right? But if you're like, hey, it just took a couple of minutes and now let's have you guys do it again and do it a different way, and then they kind of, they get their footing with the activity, and then they start to build their creativity and their language and, all the parts that we're hoping for, then it feels a lot more satisfying, and we're not as like, oh, I spent this time, I built it all, and it didn't work, and now I definitely don't want to do another 20-minute activity that's going to fail again, right?
Practice makes perfect, and you just have to walk into it knowing I'm going to lose time. From the first Zoom class I did, I walked in thinking I've lost like an hour from the day, just because of the platform. And you have to come to terms with that and deal with it as best as you can. But put in that time with the students, like I said, every Monday, even if I've had them before, I'll be like, come on, share your screen, annotate. I'll even do remote control with them. But after you've put in that effort, it makes things a lot better, a lot easier, a lot smoother. Practice makes perfect.
I love it.
You know what else I love about these ideas? Because again, I'm going from like, okay, teachers ask me, how do I use Google this and Google that and Google whatever to create this? And I wanted to do that. And I just think, well, why don't you just document? So I'm either simplifying it for them so they don't feel like they're not performing well, because that's also a real teacher anxiety. But if that's the teacher, then the student also now has to, if the student can't use it, now, as you said, it's set up to fail. But I like that you can throw a bunch of these in one day, and at the end of every hour, that's your like transitioning activity. And by the end of the day, you've done 3 or 4 different ways, 3 or 4 different games, and you've targeted different areas. So I wish I don't have students at the moment, but I kind of want to try some of these
And target or not, you can just have fun.
Yeah, you can call your friends and do a little Zoom happy hour, Esol, and then make them play these games. Oh, we can do it at Drinks with DIESOL.
Hey,
there we go.
Yes, we should totally do that. Well, now we know what we're going to do at Drinks with DIESOL.
I guess we are doing the November Drinks with DIESOL. we've got about 100 games here. Okay, so Robert, anything else? I mean, it sounds like you're like a treasure trove of all sorts of activities. What anything else that's that you really like or that you think is worth sharing?
Let's see. So sharing the screen, telling the story. You could also do a scavenger hunt that way. I always when I was looking for Zoom games, I would see a lot of things intended for elementary school children, really. Mm-hmm. It's still applicable towards our classes. One thing was a scavenger hunt, and you could look around the room, or you could just get a picture online, do the same thing as before. But you could also do a scavenger hunt combined with apples to apples. Maybe you share a picture or a word, and then you have them go find something else too.
Oh, okay. So like,
so that's just a little twist.
So I'm gonna say like, here's my item, right? And then you guys got to go find an item that can be combined with it somehow.
Yeah. So Brent's holding up a green glass bottle, and I have here a glass of water. So I could hold that up and say, oh, the water goes on the glass.
Okay.
Excel's got some coffee. I don't think that matches with the glasses well, but it's up to Brent to decide.
I'm just losing today.
Right. And someone might bring a flower or something and then say, oh, that's going to become a vase, or, that's.
And you said you could be doing that with images, right? So students could go out and Google the image, share the image, and then do you vote? Does a teacher decide? Does a class decide? Well,
make it up as you go.
Yeah, also that.
The whole idea of getting pictures really came from my students giving their presentations, and it's on Zoom, so I can look at you read, and that's fine. But make use of the platform, and it's not too hard. Share me some pictures to go with your presentation. And this one student, he gave a presentation on the Harlem Globetrotters.
Nice.
And he had exactly one black and white picture that stayed up the entire time. So when I was giving him my critique, I didn't have my camera on. I just shared the screen of a Harlem Globetrotters like best of video, and it was just slam dunk after slam dunk as I was explaining to him. You gave us some good information, but it was a little bit dry. So I thought, why didn't he make use of the internet? You've got everything at your fingertips. So I just used that as a way to get students to spice up the presentations originally, really.
I love it. Yeah, that's, I think once people start realizing, a lot of times, again, maybe more of an adult thing, but like they don't realize or don't kind of focus on how much information and how much access they have right there to be able to share and to be able to build and create with, which I think is one of the great things about classes these days for me is once they start recognizing, they're like, wait, I can do this. And it's like, I can do that. And you're like, you can do anything. Right. And then, then they start really enjoying the process a lot more. Because I think that for many years, students have been trained to work with dry or minimal access to information and materials. And now that it's all out there, there's so much fun for them to have, right?
It's kind of overwhelming, really. I like books. They're my friends, but they're very boring for some people. You don't have to read a book. People are reading all the time on Facebook or Twitter or anything. I think just like teachers with technology, students are sometimes reticent to dive in, and these little baby steps can help everybody.
I'm thinking as we're talking about the simplicity of the games. That's right. When we first started teaching from home or teaching through Zoom, it was just a monumental task to try to figure out how to do all these things. And I remember the one thing that kind of solves all my issues, or when I sort of felt a little more relief, is all I need is to be able to share the screen and to use the chat, as long as they can hear me, right? I mean, to get the very minimal, because at first it was try and fail and try again, try and fail and try again. And so again, all of these things you could do without having to, you just need the material that you're using from whatever curriculum you're teaching, right? Because all of these can then turn into okay, now you guys are going to type out a story or type this out or expand on it for homework. So you can do the simple game in class and then expand on it at a later hour or in a follow-up activity, which I really like, because you're repeating the process. I also like
that you have these things here. You've got the chat available. You haven't erased the board.
Right.
So, Robert, one thing that you're saying to us really stands out to me is let go of the rules, right? Let go of like it must be this and it must be that. And I think you're kind of layering that in as Esol and I go into like, you could do this and this and this, and you're like, you could, or you could simplify and just make it, and both ways are great, right? Depending on what you're trying to do and how quickly you're trying to do things.
Yeah, be ambitious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a lot of fun things. I think this is just a great starter, and I hope that, like, as we were going through, and Esol, I'm sure you'd agree with me, like, it starts sparking ideas, right? Because when you start simple, it's easy to spark ideas from simple, right? When you're like, okay, I'm going to set up this board, and then this board is going to link you out to 10 different websites, and those 10 different websites is each, it's like, hold on a second, that's not simple. That's not a simple start, right? And so I like this idea of, I'm going to really encourage people to go back and listen, because each of these kind of like sets your mind onto like where you want to go and what you're trying to do with your students. And there's just so much potential for creativity and student engagement with basic starts and kind of, zero prep, but also kind of easy expectations for the students too, where they don't really have to spend too much time figuring out what you're trying to do.
Yeah, little to no prep, and after 1-2 examples, the student should be able to pick it up pretty easily. And you had all those back pocket games for those last 5 minutes. You've got them now.
Awesome.
Mad Libs. I love that one. And again, Mad Libs have been there forever, but Mad Libs gives me all sorts of great ideas.
Okay, so Esol, we have gotten a review.
What?
From Emily Minerva. Thank you so much for sharing. It's short and sweet, and we are grateful for it. So it says, yes, thank you. Great for all teachers, but especially for ESL and ELL. Truly, thank you. So Emily, if you are listening to this episode, please feel free to reach out. Feel free. Please reach out, because we would love to send you the pin as a thank you for coming on and leaving that review for us. All of these reviews really help us out and help other people find the show. So thank you so much.
All right, it is time for our fun finds. And Brent, you're going to kill me for this one. Because it's coffee related, and it's I recently got really lazy, and I don't like to I usually have an iced coffee in the morning to get my day started.
You're not going to recommend instant coffee, are you?
I've never had instant coffee.
Okay,
I've never done.
Wait.
And it's worse. It's Starbucks.
Wait, what? You're really in your fun find is a Starbucks instant coffee?
We're going with lazy and simple, right?
Oh my God.
And guess what I have this morning?
So this is like powder and hot water that you put into a cup?
That's the state of, as I said, 2021's got to be a better
good
year.
Lord. Okay. I don't know if I can accept that, but all right. Okay, so tell us about why this is so fun and enjoyable for you.
Because I don't have to do any prep. It's just the water and
some things are worth prepping for.
Yeah, but this, I'm getting, sometimes it's like, what? I have to get in my car, drive out there, and that's kind of where it's like, nope, let me just save a little money, and it's mediocre coffee, if you accept mediocre.
All right.
I know Brent's a coffee snob, so
I don't know what to say about it. I certainly get the idea of not wanting to leave the house early in the morning, though, so I understand that. All right, so my fun find is the show Ted Lasso. If you haven't seen this on Apple TV, so I know a lot of people don't have Apple TV, but if you are going to go get yourself a Christmas gift of some sort of Apple product, I think they're giving Apple TV for free away with that. Or if you get the 1 month free subscription or whatever that is, the first show I would recommend watching is Ted Lasso. It is truly joyful. It is like the character Jason Sudeikis, who plays the main character. He's like this very positive and guy who's always trying to look on the bright side of things, and he's moved to England to become a soccer coach where he doesn't know anything about it because he's been a football coach his whole life, an American football coach. And so it's a great show. Like, really, just his joy and positivity is like something we really need these days. And I was incredibly impressed with how well done the show is. Still modern. It's not like a cheesy and cheeky, like, oh, like everything's all great all the time. There's ups and downs in it, but I can't recommend it highly enough. Outstanding. So Ted Lasso. Robert, do you have a fun find, something that you'd like to share?
Voting.
All right.
Voting works. We found out this past election that voting matters. No, it doesn't matter if you were for Trump or Biden. We see how close it was across all of the states. Voting is a fun find. We are finding out that it works, it's important, and it's a way to get your voice heard.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And in America, we've always got an election coming up, so pay attention to those local elections.
Absolutely. Awesome.
Thanks so much for listening to the show. As always, you could win a one-of-a-kind Diesel pin by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're giving us a shout out any other way, make sure you tag us on social media so that we can get that out to you. Otherwise, we don't know that it exists somewhere. We also sent out a kind of a poll on whether we should have a Drinks with Diesel because it falls on the day after Thanksgiving, which is Black Friday. And we decided that if we had enough interest, we would hold it. And I think, Brent, have we come to a consensus on this?
I think we're leaning towards yes. Yeah, I think we're leaning towards doing it.
Leaning towards yes. So again, it's just every 5th Monday of the month, which happens maybe twice or 3 times in this case this year. We just have a kind of like a 1-hour get together with our listeners. We play games, we do prizes, and then we connect listeners from all over. So we've now got a little group of listeners that talk to each other outside of the show. So that's kind of cool. So we're connecting you there. So for information on that, please, of course, it will be on our website, drinks. It'll be diesel.org/drinks.
Mm-hmm.
Or I know, of course, we'll be sending stuff out through our social media channels.
Yeah, so you can sign up at that at diesel.org/drinks and be reminded of it too by email in case you forget, because that is Black Friday and people might be distracted with other things on the internet on that day. But yeah, Drinks with Diesel, we are leaning towards a yes for sure. So sign up if you want to participate. For show notes and other episodes, please check out diesel.org/29, the number 29. Or, of course, you can always listen to us at VoiceEd Canada. That's VoiceEd, VoicED.ca. You can find us on Twitter. The show is at DiesolPod, DIESOLPOD, and I am at Brent G. Warner.
You can find me, Eshel, at ixy_pixie. That's IXY_PIXY. And Robert, how can people get in touch with you?
I am not a social media person, so they can directly email me if they like. It is RWJonte. That is Romeo, Whiskey, Juliet, Oscar, November, Tango, Echo @gmail.com.
Nice.
Cool.
In Czech, thank you is Děkuji for tuning into the Diesel podcast.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye, guys.